Guitar playing to me, wow. It's the thing that really kind of made me find my voice, you know, as a songwriter. Like, it's sort of the root, the foundation. When I started playing guitar, that's what I wanted to do, was just be a guitar player. But the natural instinct in me was to start singing. The guitar is really what started it all. Well, my dad listened to a lot of music. So anytime we were in the car, music was always playing. And it was, if it wasn't classic rock, it was jazz. If it wasn't jazz, it was Latin music. My mother, on the other hand, she did as well, but it was like pop music. So we were always sort of surrounded by it. I think that was my initial interest. That wasn't the thing that made me want to play an instrument. It was just happened to be there, you know? And it was the thing that would always spark my imagination. Certainly on those car rides, right? You know, like, all along the Watchtower would be playing, and I'd be looking out the window and, like, so, you know, I'd be dreaming something up as time and life went by. That was it. You know, my dad played a little guitar, but it wasn't something that was obvious to us. So when I got to middle school, I got into rock music, contemporary rock music at the time. And so when I got to middle school, I think I had like a Def Leppard shirt on or something. And I met my friend, who's still a good friend of mine, my friend Pat, and he had like a Cinderella jacket. And we were the rocker dudes in the middle school. Eventually we were like, let's start a band. And I didn't have an instrument at the time, but I knew that it was something I kind of wanted to do. And I thought, drums, I'll play the drums. And so we were real eager to start this band. So we started to flyer the town looking for, like-minded musicians. And we got a bite, and this guy came over to my friend's apartment. He auditioned for our band. And he was probably like a little perplexed as to like, what the hell am I doing in this kid's bedroom? Like, he was a little older, but he had his amp and his guitar, and he was wailing and doing his thing. And I remember he had a Rush tape on the top of his amp. I don't know which one it is. It's the one that has like the 50s aesthetic to it. Permanent Waves, maybe, I'm not sure. But anyway, he tells us, he's like, listen, if I'm gonna be in your band, we have to play Rush covers. And I didn't know who Rush was, and I'm gonna be the drummer, and I didn't have a drum set. So I'm like, sure, we'll play Rush covers. This guy's so awesome, we're gonna do this. Like, absolutely. So that night, my friend gets a call from some random person saying, you guys are a bunch of dreamers. Nothing's ever gonna happen for you. And I said, fuck that guy. And I knew my dad had a guitar like in the closet. I think he bought for my brother. And I grabbed the guitar, and that's the first time I touched the guitar. And that's why I got into guitar playing, spite. Here's the funny thing is, like, right, you think about this and it's like, Coheed, I refused to listen to Rush after that moment, like never. And then Coheed sort of becomes a thing, and that's the first band we get compared to. And I'm like, holy shit, like, if I got in this as, for spite, like, the universe is doing the same thing to me, like, so I had to eventually listen to some Rush. I didn't really learn how to play guitar properly. It scares me because I still am not entirely sure I know what I'm doing. I just kind of picked everything up by ear and just hoped for the best. I learned how to play guitar like in a band. We didn't know what we were doing, got 4 people together, and we just kind of figured it out. At the time, I was and still am a huge Hendrix fan. So that was my thought, was like, that or Slash. And then eventually I actually saw my first live show in 93, 94, which was like Sabbath at the Beacon Theater with Dio fronting it. Seeing that live sort of performance like made me realize, oh wow, this is like what I want to do with my life. And so we really got serious. The drummer that we had in our band, his dad worked at like a cassette manufacturing plant. So he had a bunch of tapes in the basement, and we'd like sort of pick from them, like Misfits, Legacy of Brutality, Naked Reagan, Gay Bikers on Acid, like just these random things that we would like kind of pick from. And I remember the Misfits being one that like, you know, just made me also like kind of understand song structure quickly, because it was, you know, you listen to Jimi Hendrix or like Sting or whatever, you know, this is a little sophisticated and out of reach for someone like who I was at that age. But I listened to the Legacy Brutality and it like all sort of kind of made sense to me. Oh, that's a chorus, you know, that kind of thing. That was, you know, like kind of our beginning stages of our band. But, you know, yeah, music started to evolve. The contemporary music started to evolve. And so we went from one thing and moved into the grunge era. And that, I think that to me resonated more. Nirvana, I just saw myself in those acts more so than I did in the acts that would kind of dress up, you know. And I would try to do that, but my personality, I'm pretty introverted, so you know it took a lot for me to be bold. I remember Jane's Addiction was one that I loved Jane's Addiction so much and would try to emulate Dave Navarro, and that was like the band that we were like modeling ourselves after. When everything kind of became, you know, popular and less beautiful, I guess, is when I could see myself as like a performer, like, and made more sense to me. And I had more courage, I think, at that time when I saw that, because I could see myself doing it in that way. I think after like the artistry of like the songs, the personality needs to fit somewhere. And I had always been just a guitar player. And I felt very comfortable in that because I got to be in the background. I wasn't the focal point. And it was by accident that I became that. It was a really hard thing to digest, but it was nice to see what I thought were other introverts like being in that spotlight. It made it a little easier for me to kind of be comfortable. Most of my middle school, high school years, I was just the guitar player, but you know, I had sang songs in those bands, and I was getting more from that than I was with the guitar alone. But again, there was apprehension because, yeah, now I'm going to be the front person. And that's where sort of the idea of concept became a thing, because I was like, oh, it's easy for me to sort of construct this facade that I can put my life inside of. And, you know, I won't feel as exposed. You know, it's funny, I would go to school with my guitar and my amp, and my dad would just be like, why are you bringing all that stuff to school? And, you know, I'd get to school and I would walk to the bus station and I'd take a bus all the way up to Woodstock, New York. And I would stay there for a while and I'd play with the band that I had started, that I had then fronted, which I became the front man actually accidentally in a way, because we had a front man. He couldn't make it to the rehearsals, so I would sing the parts. The drummer was like, why don't you just sing the songs? And that was like, I think as much as I say I was brave enough to become the singer, that wasn't the case. It was just like this accident happened. It's like, oh, maybe I should do this, you know? When I initially created the first record, Second Stage Turbine Blade, as much as it sounds like a science fiction thing, it was actually the part my dad worked on at a heat treatment factory. That's what he did for airplane parts. He treated the second stage turbine blade. I constructed the concept because, my dad was a junkie, but he was like a supportive dad, so for me it was like I didn't want people to see this kid that came from a broken home. I didn't want to villainize my parents. You know what I mean? They were so supportive. They were beautiful people. They're still together. So I constructed a concept to hide my life behind because I was like, it would make me so emotional to know that someone would think that, I'm even getting emotional right now. And I'm fucking 46 years old. And this is a thing I created at 18. That's why I think most people find Coheed so confusing, is because I didn't want to share any of my life with the world. But I wanted to do this because it was so important to me to express myself in this way, because it's so hard for me to communicate with people. But this is a way for me to exercise all of that. But again, I didn't want to hurt anyone along the way. And I knew by expressing that at that time, I probably wouldn't have been as mature as I am now to figure out a way around communicating that. Every record is like an extension of my life. It's so wild. I think about it and I listen as we do these, we go back and we play records in their entirety. I mean, they're time machines back to the moments that had inspired them. And some of me, I don't even recognize. And that's what's so funny, because it's most from the outside perspective, all they really see is a science fiction world that has no connection to me, but it is so connected to me. Every part of it. So this was modded out. Funny enough, it was modded out by V-Man of Slipknot. We put in these David Gilmour EMGs. So this isn't original, but the rest of the guitar is. Well, I guess the Spurzels aren't. It's a Fender. I kind of sanded down the logo. I put Batwoman up there. This clown, Mudflap Girl, the silly ladies thing. So when I sang into the pickups, it just like a dummy. You see, I was a different person on stage. But I have this At the Drive-In sticker from back when I would see them every time they would come through New York. Black Flag. I actually had a door knocker on here for just sound. And I thought that was such an interesting sound, especially coming through the pickup. So I had a guitar knocker here, but then I took it off. But yeah, that's my third guitar.
When did you get that?
Maybe high school. I think my dad got it for me, actually. I try to keep everything. This is the guitar I've been playing at the house. We gotta glue this guy on her. So this is the first Explorer I ever bought. This originally had EMGs in it. Found this at a Guitar Center, used. Had black EMGs in it. At the time, I was playing an SG Special, but it broke. We were on the road, we were still in a van. Strap came off, guitar hit the floor, headstock broke. The next tour we were on, I needed a backup. And so this I found at a Guitar Center in New Jersey. We cleaned it up a bunch. I added the flag to match the SG, which is fixed and with me as well. But yeah, this is my first Explorer. This is the one that got me into the guitar. And I thought, wow, I saw it up there and all I could think of was James Hetfield from Metallica. So, and I was like, it's good enough for James, it's good enough. I'm gonna play this. So, yeah. So that's that. I found this on tour at what's that place in Cincinnati? Mike's. This was hiding. So this is like my main axe. But I found this at Mike's Music in Cincinnati. It was sitting behind like a bass cab, just like getting nailed. But I'd never seen an Explorer like that, you know, with all these like cool like beveling things. So had to have it. Although, of course, we swapped out all this stuff through the years. Headstock broke, of course. I'm pretty bad at with the headstocks. I'm really bad at showing off my guitars, honestly. So I had this idea on a flight. I started to collage together this, actually, which I call the jackhammer. It's kind of a hybrid of an SG meets Explorer / Mockingbird. And the one thing I've always like wished about the Explorer is that it had like a traditional like Gibson-ish headstock. So I went with something like this, which I kind of love because it gives you this grip so if you want to bend the neck a little bit. EI stands for Evil Instrument, kind of playing off of Evil Ink Comics, my comic imprint and record label. On sale now. No. You know, I wanted something that I could call my own, basically, you know? And I thought, what better way to do it than myself? So, I don't know. Every day, I'm pretty reserved, pretty quiet. I walk around my neighborhood and I feel anonymous and comfortable. But when I'm on stage, I feel like a kid in the bedroom with the door closed and I can do whatever I want. I mean, not to be cliche because of the comic book connection, but it's like being Superman for me. In my day, I am way reserved and I'm not that loud a personality, but on stage it just turns on and it feels great. Because there's like so many different avenues that Coheed goes, you know, you have like the pop sense, you have the progressive, heavier things. I would like categorize these songwriting approaches in personalities. So I had like I had these weird names for Papa Porpoise would write all the metal stuff. Camille would write the more small, like quiet stuff, like the ballads. Mr. M would write the hit with like the pop. I would just like create these like weird personas for like the song type structures that I was writing and just like kind of catalog them in there. Not on paper, but like in my head, like, you know, this one's coming from Professor Plum of like Clue fame. That's what I named the guy that would do the prog stuff. But just weirdo. It feels comfortable for me to create that way. Again, going back to that early, you know, teenager where I don't want to put up walls. I want to be as expressive as I possibly can. I think Coheed has always been so odd in its upbringing. Every record we kind of break the mold a little bit, and it's just part of the DNA of what we do. I think it also works because everybody here is a very wild personality and loves all forms of music. This is a club of wild weirdos. So like so lucky to be able to do what I do. because I think it's so special. And I never, as much as like I have my issues with it at times, like I don't know if I could ever do anything else. I just wanted to play what was in here. That's all. And I find that as I construct something, you know, the melody that comes in the head like really kind of informs what's going to come next. And it just keeps growing until, like, you know, the statement is punctuated and the party's over. I just want to do what sounds good and that I know I'll enjoy listening to when it's done.